First of all, thank you very much, Sarah, for having me here today. I'm very excited to be talking about two of my favorite parts of Power Platform, Power BI and Power Apps, specifically Canvas apps. First things first, who am I? So I'm Tom Firth. I'm a Power Platform architect at BJSS. I spent the early part of my career doing consulting, doing a lot of Excel every day, which is kind of how I ended up getting into Power Platform. I started using Power Platform back in 2019. So I've been doing it for quite a few years now. I've designed and developed apps across multiple sectors, retail, transport, telecoms, banking and finance, lots of different apps, lots of different sectors, with my preference being Canvas apps and Power Automate. I'm based in Manchester. I help run the Manchester Power Platform and Dynamics user group. So if you are in Manchester, make sure you check out our January user group. And also, I'm a Microsoft certified trainer. So what that means is, not only do I enjoy doing all this stuff, I enjoy teaching others how to do it as well. But who am I really? So I'm actually a Manchester-based tech nerd. My favorite thing to watch on TV is Family Connect. I like to spend my weekends hiking in the Peak District with my partner. There she is. I enjoy bouldering and pub quizzes. And I'm currently learning Chinese because my partner's Chinese. So that's a little bit more about me, a little bit more about the man under the Santa hat. Okay, cool. So this is what the Power Platform looks like currently. We've got updated co-pilots to replace the much loved Power Virtual Agents. But today we're just going to be focusing on Power Apps and Power BI. So first things first, what is Power BI, right? So if you ask Microsoft, they'll say Power BI is a collection of services that work together to turn your data into coherent, visually immersive, interactive insights. Power BI, it lets you connect to different data sources and visualize and find out what's important and share that with everyone else in your company. So if you ask Microsoft, that's what they say. If you ask other people, they might just say it's just a graph making tool, but it's a lot more than that. It provides interactive and visual reporting, which means that users are able to see the changes that they want appear in the app as they're building it. It allows us to transform data. So when you use Power Query to bring data into Power BI, you can clean and transform data so that it is fit for purpose. Integration from multiple sources. One of the best things about Power BI is that you can use it to build out a data model, even if your data is coming from many different systems. It gives us real-time analytics, which allows users to see what's going on in the here and now, and it allows them to be up to date. Also allows collaboration and sharing, ensure that everyone is looking at the same data and allowing them to come together and come to the same conclusions. And finally, it allows the integration of AI as well to not only tell you what's currently happening, but what might happen in the future with predictive analytics. So that's Power BI. We also have Power Apps that we're going to discuss today. So Power Apps is a platform for allowing users to create custom business applications without the need for code, right? It makes it accessible for those who've never coded before, and it makes it really easy to get into building applications yourself. It's highly customizable. The user has full control of the look and the feel of the app that they're developing, and they're able to tailor it to meet their business needs. Again, we can integrate from multiple sources. So, it's the same as Power BI, where we can build something that works, even if we're constrained to using specific systems. Mobile accessibility is another great part of Canvas apps. Whenever I show people Power Platform for the first time, they're always amazed that they can build something and have it working on the phone by the end of the session. We've also got collaboration and sharing again, just like Power BI, but also real-time data capture. And this is where users can use and update data as they need. Okay, great. So the next thing we want to talk about is this quote. Now, this quote: most of Power Platform just makes data ready to plot in Power BI, which is something that I find to be very true, right? And I got this from Laura Graham Brown, and she does loads of great stuff with Power BI, so I definitely recommend checking her stuff out. But it's absolutely true. A lot of the stuff that we do in Power Platform is just collecting that data and preparing it in a structured way that allows us to analyze it and visualize that data. So why should we use both of them together? So you can have interactive data updates. And what I mean by this is that Power BI, it's read-only. But if we introduce Power Apps into Power BI reports, we can actually start changing the data as needed in the report itself. It offers a unified experience. So Power Apps that are run within the context of the Power BI report, it means that any filtering that we do in Power BI is reflected in the app as well. And we'll show you that in a little bit. It makes data entry very efficient. So rather than going between systems to update stuff, everything's just in one place. We have the real-time analytics. So if we're using the right data source that actually supports direct query, the Power BI dataset, it will be refreshed in real time, which it allows the user to immediately see any changes that are made. So that's super useful. And finally, it offers enhanced collaboration. So we're able to work on data as a team, see these changes happening in real time in one place, and ensure that everyone is working together in the right way. Okay, so we're going to get a bit hands-on here. There's going to be a bit of a demo. We're going to first look at how we insert a Canvas app into a Power BI report, and then we're going to do it the other way around, where we put some Power BI into Power Apps. Now, just a caveat, right? So first of all, it's a demo, so whatever can go wrong will go wrong. So I appreciate any patience, and thank you for that. But also, some of the stuff I'm going to be doing is not necessarily best practice, right? I'm going to cut some corners and do stuff that allows me to show the link between Power BI and Power Apps in the fastest way, even though some of the stuff, it might not be what we do in real life. Okay, cool. So I am now going to switch screens and share to this one. So as you can see, I'm just going to move Teams up there so I can see your guys' faces here. As you can see, we've already got a Power BI report ready. Now, you might recognize this. This is the financial sample data that Microsoft do for some of their labs. And yes, the data's in here. We've mapped it across. We've got our certain fields in. And what we want to do is we want to start by bringing in a Canvas app and seeing how we can link it and how we can update the data as we go. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a little bit of space. Move some of these across, and we're just going to slot it in down this right-hand side. So we're going to pull it from the right-hand side here as a visualization. We're going to stretch it out. Now, the first thing that you do to get started is you need to add your fields to it. So we're using SharePoint as a data source here. This is an import query, so it's not direct query. But we will pull across the various fields that we want. So I'm going to add sales. I'm just going to make sure it doesn't summarize. Maybe country, segment, title, which actually relates to products, but it's in SharePoint, so we need that title field. And then finally, the most important one to bring across is the ID, right? And whenever you bring in Power Apps into your Power BI, and you want to interact with that data, you need to make sure you've got that ID in there because that's what allows us to interact with that data. Okay, cool. So we've got all our fields in. Now we're going to choose which environment we're going to build it in. We're going to go for the Power BI demo here. And we're going to create a new one. Now this one, fingers crossed, it's all going to go to plan. Just let it take its time. Perfect time for a sip of water. Okay, perfect. So you can see it's created it. You can see that it's given us a gallery in there. Now, this gallery, if we take a look at the actual data source, you can see that it's coming from this Power BI integration.data. Now, this is a special object that's created whenever you try and create a Power Apps within Power BI. Now, this is read-only, and that's where we need to do some extra thinking of how we're going to write back to our data. Okay, but first we're going to make this look a little bit. We've got to make sure that it contains the information that we want, right? So it's a Canvas app, so we can move stuff around. We can insert a text box. We can insert a text box just to get the top. Make it different color. Maybe change the text as well to white. So that it looks a little bit more like a header that we recognize, and we'll just call it products and sales. Okay, now we've got our gallery here. We can stretch this out and we can add some of the fields that we actually want in here. I'm thinking that maybe we add ID that we'll put over here. And you can see at the top, we just changed it from this item to ID. But you'll see that the only fields that we can actually select here are the ones that we brought in from the Power BI. So we'll bring in the ID, so we have that. We will have the product name, which is actually called title in here. And we will also pull in maybe the sales. Okay, maybe we'll stick a pound sign here. So you can see that I'm not renaming any of the controls on the left. Obviously you should, but in the interest of time in the demo, I'm not going to. Okay, so back to the notes, just make sure not forgetting anything. Yeah, great. Yeah. Okay, perfect. So now what we're going to do, we're going to save it. We're going to call it live demo app. And then we're going to publish it. And then we're going to switch back to our Power BI and see the update. Now, this is where there is a bit of a lag because of caching, but I'm hoping that it's just going to pull it through. Didn't take this long when I was doing it myself earlier. Here we go. Right, so you can see that all our information is pulled through, and this is reflecting the data that's in the app, right? So the data source for this is the Power BI integration. And the good thing is, as we click around in here, you'll see that the Canvas app re-apps to it as well, right? So you click France, it filters on that. You can click different parts, and it filters it onto there. So it's very much linked, and you can see how using them in context can be really useful. So that's great, but what we want to do, we actually want to interact with our data. So we want to do CRUD operations, which are create, read, update, and delete. So we're going to jump back into Power Apps, and we're going to look at how we can do that. Now, this is where I'm going to cut some more corners, and we're going to create a template screen with a form. Now, if we look at this form, we need to connect it to some data, right? Now, we can connect it to our Power BI integration, but that's not what we want because that's read only. So we're going to bring in our SharePoint data. So we'll bring it across our Power Automate demo financial sample. And then we can hook this form up to our data, and then hopefully we can start interacting with it. So we're going to change our data source to financial sample. We're going to add some fields in. We will have sales, country, have ID at the end, profit, and I can't remember what the other one is. We'll stick ID in as well. Okay, so we've got some fields in there. Now, the other thing that we need to do when configuring this form is make sure that the item that it's focused on is actually the one that we've selected from this screen. So what we want to do is we want to make it so that if you hit this little button here, it's going to navigate to screen 2. But we want this item to reflect the one that we've just clicked. And the way that we do that is through doing a lookup, right? So a lookup brings information from one table to another. So we're going to look up our financial sample where the ID equals the same as our gallery1.selected.id. And it's going to bring it across. However, because one of these is text and one is a number, we're just going to have to wrap that in a value. And I'm hoping that it's going to bring it across now. Go back. No. Get the one that I prepared earlier and just make sure it's exactly the same. Okay. So we're hoping that when we click this, the information is here. Oh no. Maybe have I missed a step somewhere? Okay. So that's the idea. I might have to jump to the one that I made earlier just to check. But yes, the idea is that you bring it in, you align the data source for this, and you change the item to the lookup. Just double check that data source. Oh no, might have to get up the one that I made earlier. Yeah, okay, bear with me. I'm gonna have to jump to make.powerups.com. Oh, of course it's going wrong when I'm doing it. Okay. So if
Joy
we go
of
to
a
our
live demo.
yeah, gone into it.
Always the way.
Oh, do you remember which one it is now? I believe it's just app. So this is going to be a bit more complete than I planned, because you'll see all the other bits that I've put in. Is this the right one? Okay, yes. So if we go to our one that we had over here and we go into edit, it's going to open up Power Apps, and we're going to see what it should look like. So by linking that form to your actual data source and then pulling the information for the one that you selected from that first screen, you can make sure that you're actually connecting in the right way so that when you're mapping this stuff, it's actually updating. So if I go back to, just override, go back to screen 2 here, you can see that when I select one of these, all the information is here, right? So we've got a few extra fields that we didn't see before, but all that information is in. Now, if we're going to update one of these, let me just check which one it is. And we're going to change that from Spain to Germany. You can see that up here, the updates that we've made, okay, so we don't have country, but we can see that the updates that we've made have not pulled through, right? So if we change, for example, Cartera to Velo, you can see that it's not changed. And that's because this screen that we're seeing here is only showing the Power BI data, right? So it's read-only data set. So any updates that we make, it's not actually pulled through. And the way that you ensure that it does pull through is you've got to run a refresh on your semantic model here. So that's one of the things where if you're using SharePoint compared to using a data source that has direct query, if you're using one that you use in import, you then have to go in and refresh the semantic model here. That's going to set up a refresh, and then we'll see the changes reflected in our app. Okay. So we've managed to get that in place, and if we go back, we'll have to wait for the refresh to go through, but you'll see the changes and you'll see it come through. So that is how we would update something, right? So we also need to look at how we would add something. And the way that we do that, we stick an add in here, and we'd have it navigate to that screen too. We'd have it change the form to a new form so that we can add some more data, and then we can import all our stuff here. When we send it away, it's going to do the same, where it's going to add it to our SharePoint, but we won't see it reflect in the Power BI until we actually do that refresh. Similarly, so we can create now that we've got this add up here. We can read and we can update, but we also want to delete as well. So if we take a look here, we also have the ability to delete records, and we do it in the same way that we did before, where you use that lookup to find the record from the gallery that you've selected that you're currently in, and remove it from there. So doing it here, you'll see you'll delete it, but you won't see it change here because the data source of this gallery is that Power BI integration. Cool. So that's how we do it for SharePoint. Now, when we look at Dataverse, it's slightly different, right? And that's because Dataverse, it uses direct query. It means that when you import your data, you're actually only importing the model, and it queries the data every time. So you can see we've got similar graphs here, but if we were to build it in Dataverse in the same way, we would do the same thing, right? So we'd create an app, we'd link it to the right environment. So we create one here. We'll bring in our fields. Always remember to bring in your ID field. That always has to be in there. We'll also do sales, country. Don't summarize those sales. Product and segment. And it's even more important when you're doing it in Dataverse to select the right environment, right? Because the table that the data is stored in is going to be stored in this environment, so we've got to make sure we choose the right one. So we'll create that as new. I'm kind of skeptical because the first one didn't work, that maybe this one isn't going to work too. However, I've also created one of these earlier in the day that we can always lean back on. So once again, I will stretch out the gallery. Just add a few more in. So this will be DV, DVID actually, because it's data first. And we'll put sales in here. Maybe the product name as well. So you can see I'm just kind of placing them haphazardly. Obviously, you want to do it in a kind of organized way. So we'll create another form. I'm going to give it a go. Just connect to our actual financial data. You can see that I've got many that I've gone through over the past few days testing this out. But yes, we've got it there. We're going to connect up here. And now we can add our fields in. So we'll stick sales, country, date, ID, product, profit, and segment. Okay, great. So these are all in here now. Now we do want to change the item of this form to reference the gallery. I'm hoping this works this time. I'm actually just going to copy and paste it from the one that I did earlier. Just got my little notepad up on the other screen. Okay, so it does work for this one. Hey. Okay. So yes, by referencing the item, we can now see the one that we selected up here is the information is reflecting here. So we can add a little bit of extra navigation here. So have this to navigate to screen 2. Have this to submit the form and then navigate to screen 1. Navigate to screen 1. But also, when we're doing this with data, this is where we need an extra step, right? And because it's direct query, we need to tell the Power BI dashboard, the report, that it needs to update itself, right? So to do that, we do a different function, which is Power BI integration refresh, do the open and close brackets. And now what that means is when we submit this form, it's going to push it so that when we're in the Power BI dashboard itself, we're going to see those changes. So I'm going to save and publish this. This first. And we're going to publish. Okay, so now I'm hoping that it's going to pull it in. We'll be able to see how we can change some of these and whether it actually reflects. Because that's one of the benefits of doing it when you're using direct query. I'm just going to save and refresh this page, and hopefully it's there. Okay, so it's going to load up our app. We're going to make some changes, and we're going to see if they change in the actual dashboard itself, although it's taking its time again. So I might just jump to the one that I prepared earlier, right? So we can see, for example, this top one, Spain. You can see it's the profit actually. So this is profit by country. So if we increase that by a couple of zeros, we're expecting to see this expand, right? As it refreshes the data set and it pulls it through, you can see that the one in Spain has got considerably bigger because we've increased that here. And that's the benefit of direct query. This app here, yeah, you can see the big spike in profit there as we've raised that number very, very high. But you can see that within this app, we have that Power BI, data refresh, and that's what actually drives the information. Just wait for this one to load as well. But yeah, that's the part that you always need to remember, that there's the extra step of this Power BI integration refresh. Similarly, if we want to delete from here, we can do the remove with the lookup, but we also need to run that refresh again. So if we go back for this one here, if we hit the delete, we're expecting it to delete from here. We see the circle gets very small again, and our graphs adjust. And that's how you build it out in a way that you can interact with your data whilst being able to consume it. So if you take it back a bit and think about it as business users, this is particularly good for anomaly detection. So if you've got some random outlier and you're not really sure, say you've got a mark in Portugal, but you know you don't do any business in Portugal, you can change it very much there and then. It's also very useful because it allows users to update these things all from one place. They don't have to switch between and work out what's going on. It's all very much presented to them, and it allows you to tailor the way that they consume the data to be most appropriate for them. Okay, cool. So I'm aware that we kind of jumped about a bit there because the initial one wasn't working. But yes, in a similar way, we can build out these Dataverse ones so that it captures and it live updates as well. Okay, cool. So that's how we do it with Power Apps in Power BI. What I want to show you now is the other way around. And that is to put Power BI tiles and Power BI reports into a Canvas app. So we'll go to make.powerapps.com and we'll just create a blank Canvas app here. So we'll create a blank app. A little bit funny. Go live demo Canvas. Okay, so we're going to create that. Now, the first thing that you need to do when you are wanting to put stuff from Power BI into your Canvas app is you need to pin it to a dashboard somewhere. Now, I've done that already earlier, but yes, you can't pull in full reports as is. They have to be part of a dashboard to be able to bring them in. And that goes the same as individual tiles as well. Okay, so we're going to search for a Power BI tile here. It's going to ask me the workspace. It's going to be this Power BI one. It's going to be the Dataverse one that we're going to go for. And it's going to be this tile here, Power BI Demo VRT. Now it's going to wait. And you can see here, and you can see that the information has come in. You can see that if we interact with this, that the data does filter as expected, and we've still got our Power App from before in there. Take that filter off though. Now this is really good because we were able to surface the report and we're able to, provide information around it and build it into logical things so that, when your users are going on a journey, they can encounter this at the right time. But one of the things that I like most about this is if we adjust this, allow a new API from false to true, it means that we're able to actually interact with the API itself and we can start calling different things from in here. So if we have a look at the tile that we brought in, and I'm aware the tile is a bunch of things, and we go to the tile URL, you can actually see there is an API call here, right? So you can see that it calls out the dashboard ID, the tile ID, and a config ID there as well. And one of the really good things that we actually can do is we can adjust this ourselves by adding extra things to it. So if we add, and the syntax is like this, is add $filter equals table name / column name, and then you put whatever logic you want there. And if we change it to equals, we've got one extra quotation mark there. Bear with me. Get rid of that. You can see that we filtered it on the product, and you can see that that graph there is limited to only this VTT product. So by just changing that allow new API from false to true, we're now able to actually interact with it up here and do some custom stuff, which is really good, and it's really good for guiding users on a journey and showing them what they want to see. But it doesn't stop there, right? Because this is just a string that we've put in. So what we actually can do is we can build wider business logic into the app, and I'm going to do that by inserting a drop down. And if we've got our drop down here, and we have, I'm just going to go to my so just going to call out the products that we have, which I think are VTT, Velo, and I can't remember another, so I'm not going to risk it. But you can see that if we change this URL here, and we get rid of this equals VTT, and we change it to equals the whatever we've selected in the dropdown, right? So we do and dropdown one dot selected text. This and selected text dot value, and then we have the last little bit. This should, in theory, so it's still going to be filtered on VTT, but if we change the drop down now to Velo, you can see that the Power BI refreshes and it actually pulls it out of there. Now this is really useful because we're able to apply, you know, layers of logic here. We can put if statements in, we can make stuff visible based on who the user is, because of the fact that it knows who you are. And you can build it in a way that users see what's relevant to them, and you know, they're able to do it from within an app, right? It's also very useful because you can do this across. You can bring in multiple different tiles and dashboards from different areas, and you can apply these same filters to every single one by building in the logic within Power Apps. So that's where it's particularly good, and that's where that's one of the use cases that I particularly like. So it's when you change the allow new API from false to true, then you can go into the tile URL and start adjusting all this. Okay, cool. We are a little bit ahead of schedule because of the kind of tech issues. But yes, I'm just going to whip back around to recap. Bear with me. Let me share again. I'll put you guys back up there. Okay, so we've also had a look at how we can put a Power BI tile into a Canvas app as well. So let's have a look at what we actually looked at today. So we looked at how we can integrate a Power App into our Power BI report. We saw how you deal with that read-only nature of the Power BI integration in Power Apps and how you deal with it by connecting to SharePoint separately. So you've got your two data sources in there, and you use that lookup to ensure that you're updating the right records in your data set. We understood how the semantic model needs to be refreshed to ensure that it's reflected properly in the Power BI dashboard. And we also saw how you can use direct query in Dataverse to see these near real-time updates as well. On the Power Apps front, we saw how we can bring in tiles from other dashboards to our Power App. And by changing that allow new API to be true, we could dynamically update the Power BI tiles in our app. This allows us to bring in that enhanced business logic, and we can use it across multiple dashboards. Cool. So I'm going to stop there and answer any questions. I'm aware that we've speed run it a bit because I wasn't able to talk through some of the stuff. But yes, I don't know if anyone had any questions.
I can go first then. Hi, Tom. Nice presentation. Thank you. Yeah, so one of the things that, I've been using Power BI tiles inside of Canvas apps recently, and I've been coming across some limitations. I was just wondering whether there are any limitations that you've come across with it.
So yeah, so from the top of my head, it's dealing with the stuff like, so you know how we mentioned the Power BI data was read only. Trying to do the updates from the app can cause confusion, make it a bit difficult because of that kind of disconnect between the data source and the app itself. That's normally where I found developers that I work with not tripped up, but you know, those are some of the things that we found. Mm-hmm. What sort of limitations have you found?
So one of the main ones is to do with dates. So it can be quite tricky when you're using Power BI tiles in a Canvas app to filter by date using the API. And I've tried various things like creating a column in Power BI, so not in the data source, but actually in Power BI, to interact with that. That doesn't seem to work. It seems like the only way to actually get to it is to make a string column inside of your data source that has the month and the year, that kind of thing, and then filter by the string rather than the date value. But yeah, I haven't figured out a way around it so far.
Yeah, I've never actually tried doing it by date, but yeah, it's always a funny one, right?
Dates, yeah.
Classic one.
Every developer hates them.
Yeah, but no, that'd be one that I'd have to look into to see how that works. But yeah, no, it is an interesting challenge.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a hand raised, Mustafa.
Okay, I can unmute myself. Thank you. Appreciate it. I can think of a scenario, and I worked on embedding Power Apps into Power BI, a practical use case for me to enhance the data quality issue type things. For example, there could be some values about, I'm just making it up, like products or regions. Sometimes these values comes in and we look at, okay, so you can fix that at the source, or you can create a Power App right then and there for them to go and update those values. So next time when the schedule refresh happens, these values get updated. Now your metrics and KPIs shows under the same category. That would be one example. My question is, can you think of or have worked on other customer projects that you can share some of these other practical examples where you would want to embed Power Apps into reporting, not the other way around?
Power Up, yeah. So I'm going to try and keep it quite vague, but not enough so that people can't understand. But yes, I was working at an organization and there was many team leaders. So I think there was about 60 and they had various reportees and everyone was submitting data on a central system and there was occasionally outliers, right? So I'm trying to not give too much away about what it actually was, but yes, some people were submitting very high numbers and it was obviously a mistake, and their team lead, who knew these people very well, was able to identify that mistake and point them out. So it was very easy to actually go in and just change it within the dashboard itself so that all these team leaders were looking at the same dashboard so that everything was getting updated rather than it being, go away and find out, or what's this, and it's skewed the numbers the wrong way.
Right. That's another example of data quality issues to identify and correct them. Right. So appreciate it. Thank you for sharing. Thank you.
Cheers, Mustafa.
Adam, hi Adam, how you doing?
Yeah, good, thanks. Thanks, Tom. That was great. One question I had was on the automation side of things for the responses. When you're sure there with Dataverse, you can have pretty quick refreshes with the little addition there of the formula at the end. Is it a limitation of SharePoint that you can't really get things to move that quickly, or what's the best thing you can do in order to have sort of SharePoint responses come back quickly after edits have been made outside of the original source?
Yeah, essentially that's what it is. It's a limitation. The way around it is there's two ways really. One is to use something that has direct query, but obviously there's normally a cost issue with that. You can do scheduled refreshes. I think it's currently 8 times a day if you're on the Pro license, or you can update to, is it called Premium or Service? But there's one more way where you can do it more frequently in the day. But yeah, at the end of the day, if you're using SharePoint, it's normally because of cost reasons, and the limitations to it, the way around it is to spend more money on the stuff that gets around it. But yeah, it's one of those things that you need to balance, right? If the business that you're in or the customer that you're working for has very tight budgets, then they have to accept that the ability to refresh is limited, so they can't have that instant update.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's great. Thank you.
Yes, mate.
Thanks. Charlie, you got another question?
Thanks. I remembered another one of the limitations that I came across. So this is again with having Power BI tiles inside of a Canvas app. And it was the, I was working on the Power BI report at the same time as the Canvas app. So I was updating the tiles, but the tiles weren't refreshing. And the only way I could see to actually make them change would be to pin them to the dashboard again, delete the old one and swap over to the new one. I don't know if you've experienced something similar.
Yeah, so in preparation for this, there was a lot of discrepancy between the Power BI that I was looking at and the Canvas apps that I was doing as well. I ended up doing what you did, just delete, save, publish, close, and reopen again. But yeah,
seems like it's a limitation of it, but
I think
it's
so.
aggressively caching it or something. I'm not too sure. Yeah,
I think so.
Cool. Thanks. I'll keep doing that.
Cheers, Charlie.
Cool. Well, thanks, Tom. That was
Nice
great.
one.
I haven't seen a presentation about that before, so it's really interesting for little non-techie me in particular. But yeah, I mean, the joys of a live demo, but smashed it anyway. So thank you for that. And just to add, I can recommend the Manchester user group if there's anybody kind of on the call that's local. I went to a great session last month, so looking forward to January, the next in person.
I'll see you there.
Yes, you will. Yeah, I think there's a few guys coming up actually for that. I was talking to some of the ANS lot last week, so yeah, there should be a good crowd on the January event. And as far as VRTs go, we're kind of booked until April now. We've got some really cool speakers coming up early next year, so I'm looking forward to that. But this is the final one for 2023, so thank you to everybody, particularly people on the screen, actually, big supporters. So really appreciate your time and joining and speaking. And yeah, have a lovely break. I'm sure everybody needs it. It's felt like a long year, this one.
Cheers, guys. Thanks very much, and thank you again, Sarah.
Thanks again, Tom. Really appreciate it. It's a great session today.
Cheers,
Thanks,
guys.
Tom. Thanks,
Have a
Aaron.
good evening, guys.
Cheers, thank you.
Bye.
Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.